Let's talk about Aaron Rodgers.
This has something to do with the Epstein list that came out.
A lot of people, including Jimmy Kimmel, are really hoping that doesn't.
All right.
And how he's shown us who he is over.
He mentioned ivermectin being horse-based and pushed that whole narrative for a long time. He gave a platform to one of the biggest spreaders of misinformation during the COVID times, Dr. Fauci.
And over.
The alphabet gangsters who control a lot of the medicine. I know RFK Jr. personally.
And over.
What about you, though? Because you did one of the most controversial, somehow, not to me, most controversial interviews in the last, I don't know how long, when you went to Russia and did Putin. How did it feel coming back? Because like anybody who watched the interview was like, number one, it was awesome. Number two, Putin came off as an interesting, thoughtful, smart individual.
And over again.
There's a lot of old papers and files and different things about interactions that Navy pilots have had, especially Navy pilots, I believe, with unidentified flying objects. Obviously, there was some sort of Chinese spy balloon that was up in the air. Interesting timing on everything.
You're saying, oh, looky here. Is that what you just said?
Could be some of that, yeah. Did you hear about the Epstein client list about to be released, too? There's some files that have some names on it that might be getting released pretty soon. Maxwell was the only, person ever convicted of trafficking, and nobody who was involved in the trafficking ever went to jail, so nothing to see here.
The reports that came out became so alarming.
CNN has learned that in private conversations, Rodgers has shared wild and unhinged conspiracy theories in which he claims that the 2012 Sandy Hook shooting was not real. CNN knows of two people with whom Rodgers has shared these views, including CNN's Pamela Brown. In 2013, when CNN's Pamela Brown was covering the Kentucky Derby, she was introduced to Rodgers. Hearing that she was a journalist at CNN, Rodgers began attacking the news media for, quote, covering up important stories. Rodgers then brought up the Sandy Hook shooting and said the news media was intentionally ignoring that the shooting wasn't real, that it was a government inside job. When Pamela Brown asked Aaron Rodgers for evidence of what he was talking about, Rodgers then began sharing various theories that have been disproven numerous times by evidence. Rodgers falsely claimed to Pamela Brown that there were men in black in the woods by the school, and he asked if she thought that was odd. Brown says that she found the entire encounter disturbing.
That Rodgers' good friend, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., pulled the plug on the quarterback being a potential vice president for him.
CNN has also spoken to another source who would like to remain anonymous in order to avoid harassment. They had a similar encounter with Aaron Rodgers. This person said Rodgers claimed that, quote, Sandy Hook never happened. All those children never existed. They were all actors. Now, Rodgers declined CNN's request for comment.
Yet one NFL media member believes it is Rodgers' approach that gets him in trouble.
I think that Aaron Rodgers and I have some things in common. I'd like to think I could maybe get through to him and we can have a real debate. But that's the thing. He never wants to talk to anybody who might disagree with him. He goes on all these safe space podcasts and says all this crazy stuff. And the hosts never say, dude, you got to maybe try decaf or, maybe read a different book, or everything isn't a conspiracy. I love a good conspiracy theory. I love one, not 1,000 of them. It can't be that everything is the product of some massive government conspiracy. Anyway.
That being Pro Football Talk's Mike Florio, who blasted Rodgers on the Dan Patrick Show.
And when he gets in front of microphones and cameras and he wags his finger in January about how next year it's got to be all about winning. Not some of the time, not most of the time, all the time. We got to get the BS out of the building that has nothing to do with winning. Oh, you know what? I might run for vice president and ghost the Jets. And I'm going to go on all these different podcasts and spew these crazy conspiracy theories. But that doesn't count because it didn't happen in the building. He's very good at crafting a standard and not applying it to himself. Some would say he's perfectly suited to go into politics, which I think is inevitable. So that's the other side of it too. He comes off as hypocritical by not being there because of what he said in January.
So here's how I feel about all of this. Winning will cure all ills, especially when you have a market like New York that hangs in the balance. The media is vicious in that market. But if Rodgers were to take this team to the playoffs, literally no one would care about these offseason storylines. It is true to what Florio said and give credence to it, that Rodgers was the one that says we need to stop the distractions. We need to focus on winning. Winning is the only thing. We gotta limit everything that could make us unsuccessful, essentially. And all that we have seen and heard about as it pertains to Rodgers recently is that he did not go to minicamp because he had a trip planned. Head coach Robert Saleh said that this is something they talked about a while ago, gave him the green light stamp of approval to go. Whether it is a darkness retreat or it is a ayahuasca venture, again, it doesn't matter. Rodgers is always going to Rodgers. That is what we have seen from him. Whether it is being distant from his family or the politics that he spews or the reports of him being a Sandy Hook truther. There are so many different layers to who this guy is as a person, but sports fans are forgiving if you are successful. It is tribal in that way. I will root for my guy 10 times out of 10 as long as he wins. And I'll give you a great example. Chicago Cubs fans were torn, but were accepting because he was so good and helped the club to a World Series title, even though they gave up Gleyber Torres in the process. And that man was Aroldis Chapman. Go through his past, you will see horrendous acts. Horrendous. But Chicago didn't care because it was their first title in over 100 years. And he was the closer. He was the guy to help. He was a key reliever throughout that stretch, along with Mike Montgomery. So when I look at Rodgers, I see a divisive, troubling figure who cannot get out of his own way. And Florio did bring up a good point. He does not like to interact with anyone who will go against him. If we were to just go over the large now sample size of shows that he appears on his own accord. And yet here we are. It is June. NFL season, a few months away. And Aaron Rodgers, more questions than answers.